I used to be someone. That's what I kept telling myself as I sat on the cracked bench outside the Safeway grocery store in a small Oregon town called Silver Falls. My clothes smelled of days-old sweat and wet concrete, and my beard had grown into a wiry mess. A cardboard sign rested on my lap. It didn't even say God bless or veteran, just one word: hungry. I wasn't looking for pity. I just wanted to be seen. It had been almost 2 years since everything collapsed. The company I'd poured my life into, the relationships I'd ignored, and the house I lost in the mess of it all. It's strange how fast the spiral goes. One month you're worrying about quarterly projections. The next you're fighting with a raccoon over a half-eaten burrito behind a diner. People passed me by. Most avoided eye contact. Some tossed me a coin or two, which I appreciated, but none of them saw me. Not really. Until that afternoon. It was raining softly. Oregon rain. Gentle, cold, and constant. I'd pulled the hood of my faded army jacket over my head when I saw her. She couldn't have been more than 10, wearing a bright yellow raincoat and purple boots. She walked with purpose, a small brown paper bag clutched in both hands. At first, I thought she was delivering food to a friend or parent, but then she stopped right in front of me. Just stood there, studying me with those big green eyes that didn't blink like most people's when they looked at me. Then she said softly, "You look hungry." I opened my mouth to respond, but I couldn't. My throat felt tight. I just nodded. She handed me the bag. "I picked it myself. There's a turkey sandwich. I told the guy at the counter no mustard because I hate mustard. I hope you don't mind." I took the bag in disbelief, my fingers trembling a little. "What's your name?" I finally managed. "Ellie," she smiled. "My mom says I can't talk to strangers, but I think you're okay." And just like that, she turned and skipped back toward the minivan where her mom waited, engine running, wipers brushing away the mist. The door opened, she hopped in, and then they were gone. Inside the bag was a sandwich, a bottle of water, and oddly enough, a small granola bar with a sticky note stuck to it. In child handwriting, it read, "You matter." I must have stared at those 2 words for 10 minutes. I ate slowly, like it was a 5-star meal. The sandwich tasted like real food, not like charity, but like kindness. And the water? Cold, pure. That little girl had no idea what she'd done. It wasn't about the food. It was about being seen, valued. That moment, that simple gesture, did something to me. It reminded me I was still human. That night, I didn't return to my usual spot behind the train station. Instead, I found a dry corner under the overhang of a shuttered bookstore and lay there with the paper bag still folded beside me like a keepsake. I stared at the note. You matter. Funny how 2 little words, written by a kid with a purple marker, could break a man open. I didn't sleep much. My mind was churning. That girl, Ellie, had no idea who I used to be. She didn't see a failure or a Wall Street burnout or a man who'd been chewed up and spit out by the tech industry. She just saw someone hungry, and she acted. That was more than most people did. The next morning, I walked. Not aimlessly like I usually did. I walked with something like direction. I hadn't felt that in a long time. I ended up at the public library. My ID was long expired, and I didn't smell like someone they wanted hanging around. But the librarian, an older woman with thick glasses and a voice like gravel, took one look at me and said, "Keep it quiet, keep it clean, and you can stay." She handed me a guest computer pass. I sat down and stared at the screen for a long time. I hadn't touched a keyboard in over a year. My fingers felt stiff and unfamiliar on the keys, but slowly I typed in my old login credentials to an ancient email account I still remembered. To my surprise, it worked. Among the spam and old newsletters, there was a message from an old friend, Jeff, my co-founder back when we were building LucentNet, the startup that nearly made me rich before it all fell apart. The email was over a year old, just a simple line. "If you ever want back in, you know how to reach me." I sat back in my chair. What was I doing? I didn't want back in, not to the chaos, the pitch decks, the shallow smiles, the constant pressure, but I also didn't want to rot away on a bench remembered only by a little girl in a raincoat. So I wrote Jeff back. It took me nearly an hour to type 4 sentences. I told him I wasn't the man I used to be, but maybe that was a good thing. I said I had an idea, something simple, something grounded, not another app or marketplace, but something that could actually help people. I hit send. I didn't expect an answer, but 2 days later, he replied, "You've got 10 minutes. Zoom link below."
I had to borrow the librarian's headset. She eyed me skeptically, but I promised not to disappear with it. 10 minutes later, I was staring at a grainy Zoom screen in a corner of the library. Jeff's face appeared. A little older, a little rounder, but still with that same sharp glint in his eyes. "Damn, Nate," he said. "You look like you've been through it." "I have," I replied. He didn't press. He didn't ask why I'd disappeared or why I looked like I'd spent a year sleeping under bridges. Instead, he said, "What's the idea?" I told him everything. Not about Ellie, that part I kept to myself, but about a concept that had been growing in the back of my mind for years, even before I lost everything. It was something simple, a platform to connect local businesses with excess food to people in need, anonymously, efficiently, and with zero shame attached. Real-time pickups, privacy respected, and a dignity-first approach to poverty. No red tape, no waiting in lines, just help, when and where it's needed. Jeff didn't say anything for a while. Then he leaned back and said, "We could build that." He wasn't asking. He was committing. He brought in 2 more people, former engineers we used to work with. They didn't flinch when they saw me on the video calls. No one said anything about my worn hoodie or the way I looked like I hadn't seen a mirror in months. They just asked questions, listened to my sketches, and started coding. I spent my days in the library, scribbling mock-ups on napkins, typing up UX flows in Google Docs, and drinking more water than I had in the last year. I started showering at a shelter nearby. The librarian began to smile when I walked in. Some days, she'd even save me a seat near the outlet. 3 months later, we had a beta. We called it Bridge, because that's what it was. A bridge between those who had too much and those who had nothing. It started in one neighborhood in Chicago, then 5, then 10. Local businesses loved it, people used it, and word spread. Within 6 months, Bridge had gone national. By the end of the year, it was valued at $18 million. Jeff offered me a full co-founder equity package. I refused. I walked away once. This time I want to do it differently. He offered me half. I said no again. He finally made me take 25%. Enough to change my life, but not enough to change why I was doing it. The money came fast after that. VCs with smiling faces, articles in Forbes, interviews I barely recognized myself in. But I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was thinking about Ellie. I had looked for her. At first, just casual searches. Ellie Diner, Chicago. Then more desperately, I combed through social media, tried to recall any detail I hadn't already replayed 1,000 times. Her hair, her pink coat, her mother's tired voice. I even returned to the diner once, hoping I might catch a glimpse of her again. But there was nothing. Life, as it tends to do, had moved on without me. After Bridge took off, I hired a private investigator. He said, "Unusual request. You want me to track down a kid based on a sandwich and a name?" I said, "I want you to find the girl who saved my life. That sandwich was everything." It took him 2 months. When he called me, I stopped breathing. "I found her," he said. Her name was Ellie Ramirez. She lived with her mother, a nurse who had been working double shifts during the pandemic. They'd moved out of the city to a small town called Bloomington, Indiana, where the rent was cheaper and the nights were quieter. I booked a flight. I wasn't sure what I'd say. I rehearsed lines in my head the entire way there. You don't remember me, but... Hi, I'm Nate, and 2 years ago. This might sound crazy. I ended up standing on their front porch, holding a bag of groceries, palms sweaty. Her mom answered. She was older than I remembered, but those same kind eyes looked out at me. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously. I stumbled through my words, explained the day, the diner, the sandwich, told her about the app, the company, the millions. I said her daughter's kindness had been the thing that saved me, the only thing that gave me the strength to believe I was worth saving. She listened quietly, and when I finally finished, she turned and called, "Ellie!" The girl who stepped into the doorway was a little taller now, her face older by months I hadn't seen, but the moment I saw her, I knew. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. "You're the sandwich guy," she said. I laughed. For the first time in what felt like forever, I laughed. I told her I had a gift, that I didn't want to make it weird, but I had set up a college fund in Ellie's name, that she could go anywhere, any school, any dream, all paid for. Her mother began to cry. Ellie smiled and asked if she could hug me. I nodded.
The hug was small and warm, like a spark I hadn't known I needed. Ellie's arms barely reached around my waist, but somehow it felt like she was holding all the broken pieces of my past together. Her mom invited me in. We sat at their kitchen table, clean, modest, with a vase of wildflowers in the middle. It reminded me of my own childhood home before things got messy. We talked for hours about school, about kindness, about how sometimes the smallest moments leave the biggest marks. "I didn't do anything special," Ellie said once. "You did everything. You gave me hope when I had none." Before I left Bloomington, I made another decision. I wanted to do more than just help one girl. I wanted to build something bigger, something that would take the spark Ellie lit in me and pass it on. So I started a foundation, the Ellie Project. Its mission was simple: find people at their lowest and lift them up. Whether it was a meal, shelter, mentorship, or a second chance, anything that might be the difference between giving up and holding on. I poured millions into it, hired real social workers, counselors, program directors, built out youth mentorship centers in underserved neighborhoods, paid for scholarships, internships, therapy. I gave talks at schools. Sometimes Ellie joined me. She'd stand in front of a room full of kids and talk about empathy with more grace than most adults. And everywhere I went, people asked me how it started, and I always told them the same thing. It started with a sandwich. It started with a kid who saw someone hurting and decided to be kind. It started with Ellie. Years passed. Bridge grew. The Ellie Project changed lives. I became known not just as another tech millionaire, but the guy who never forgot where he came from. But I always made time for Bloomington. I visited often, brought presents on birthdays, attended Ellie's school plays. I became something between a friend and an uncle. Then, one day, Ellie sent me an email. A photo was attached. It was her college acceptance letter. Stanford, computer science, full ride. In the message, she wrote, "Dear Nate, you gave me the future. I want to help build one for others just like you did. Thank you for believing in me when all I did was buy a sandwich. Love, Ellie." 4 years later, I stood in the front row of a packed auditorium at Stanford watching Ellie walk across the stage in her cap and gown. Her mom sat beside me, wiping tears. When they called Ellie's name, I couldn't help it. I stood up and clapped like a lunatic. The entire row joined in. For that moment, the world stopped not because of who I was, but because of who she had become. After the ceremony, she ran up and hugged me with the same fierce warmth I remembered from the diner so many years ago. "You did it," I whispered. "No," she smiled. "We did." She had offers from big companies, Google, Apple.
startups I hadn't even heard of. But instead, she asked to work at the Ellie Project. She said she wanted to help it evolve, scale it with better tech, smarter outreach. Who was I to say no? So I stepped back, let her lead. It was never meant to be about me anyway. Now, every time I walk into one of our centers, be it in New York, Austin, Seattle, or back home in Chicago, I see her fingerprints everywhere. In the code, the design, the programs, in the stories of those who were saved just in time. And people still ask me, what was your biggest investment, your biggest win? They expect I'll talk about bridge or IPOs or net worth, but I never do. Instead, I say, my biggest win cost $6.49. Sometimes they laugh. Sometimes they're confused. But those who get it, really get it, nod quietly. Because they know it wasn't the money that made the moment. It was the kindness. And it changed everything.